Cities across Canada are facing a financial crunch as they fight the coronavirus pandemic and deal with the fallout. But unlike other levels of government, cities can't run a deficit. They have to balance the books by the end of the year. It's the law. That has the mayor of Vancouver fearing bankruptcy. Kennedy Stewart is the mayor, and he joins us now from Vancouver. Hi, Mayor Stewart. Good to see you again.
Hi, nice to see you too.
Can you describe for our viewers, sort of paint a picture of the state of the finances for your city right now?
Sure. Very proud of all the Vancouver residents for everything they're doing to fight COVID-19, but we've had significant economic impacts citywide. We found through a study last week that almost half of the population has either lost wages or have actually been laid off. This has led to a delay in mortgage payments and rents. And where that all hits the road is with cities. So we may lose up to $189 million this year in operating revenues. In anticipation of that, we've already laid off 1,500 staff. However, this study shows us that up to 25% of residents in our city that would normally pay property taxes, which is the core funding mechanism for our city, may not pay any or less than 50% of their property taxes. And this is, if this happens, it could cost us an extra $320 million this year. So in a very bad case scenario, we'd be losing $500 million, which is very, very serious considering our operating budget is about $1.6 billion. That is a huge hit, and we're very concerned about it. So we need provincial and federal help here if we're going to keep our local economies going.
I want to ask about the potential for that help in a second, but if under the current financial situation you've had to lay off 1,500 people, if you were to reach that scenario that you just laid out, would there be more layoffs required at that point for you, apart from any help from the province or the feds?
Oh, absolutely. We're still considering layoffs now, just with the operating revenue losses, not even considering what happens with property tax losses. So again, we're looking there. Our exempt staff, senior management are looking at adjustments as well. So this is already an emerging problem without the property taxes, without losing that revenue too. So what we'd have to do then, if we get in those situations, is we'd have to spend our reserves. We would burn through those pretty quickly. We would move on to our property sales, and then that would be then it would be in totally new charter territory. So again, we are a very key link in the economic recovery puzzle or a chain. All the business permits and licenses and engineers that go out and approve projects, like all that stuff that gets built in cities, if we have to strip down our workforce to where we can't do that, then our economic recovery is going to be very, very slow. We'd have to rehire all those people, get them back up to speed. It's very, very concerning, and the federal and provincial governments have to be aware of this and do more to help us, because it's not just Vancouver, it's cities right across Canada.
So let's start with the provincial government. What is your specific ask there?
Well, last week, when this came to my attention, we had our first detailed report. I asked the province for $200 million in immediate operating expenses. That's been denied. So the second thing we're asking for the province for is they have a program where seniors can defer their property taxes. The province will essentially loan seniors money against the values of their house to pay their property tax. We'd like that expanded to all residents, businesses, and nonprofits, and that would mean you have the senior governments that can run deficits, that can borrow a lot more or can borrow, their economic clout would help us maintain our basic services like police and fire and engineers and garbage removal, all that stuff that will start to ramp down if we don't have enough revenue to pay our staff.
Do you think the no to the $200 million is that's the end of the story, or do you have any indication that there might be some reconsideration down the road?
It's not the end of the story from my end. I mean, I have to push this as hard as I can, because otherwise, if we don't get any help from anybody, then we're automatically into large-scale layoffs. Again, we can't run deficits. So, and a lot of the money we have is already earmarked for things. Again, our budget cycle started in January, so we've had all this money locked in. We've kind of hired our extra police, our extra firefighters, and so what do we do then? When we can't make these payrolls, we have to start laying people off. And you don't want to lay off firefighters in the middle of a pandemic. It doesn't make any sense.
We were speaking with your counterparts, I think just over a week ago in Calgary and Edmonton, and they were highlighting the very same issues. And they were looking not just to the province, but as you are, also to the federal government. Have any of those conversations taken place, and what might support from the feds look like?
Yeah, we've had lots of conversations. The Deputy Prime Minister has been great. We've been on big city mayors calls where she's joined a couple of times. We've made, but what I think is cities are starting to kind of really start to do their own projections on where this is going. And I think really it's becoming quite a stark reality. I've heard some cities are already selling city lands or municipal lands in order to meet their obligations. And so I think this is, if I could say it, it's a red alert here. It is like, once we start laying off people, it'll be very, very hard to rehire them. And then any kind of economic stimulus package will not flow through to the private sector, nonprofit sector, or wherever, if your cities are not working.
If the wage subsidy, which is currently targeted at private enterprise, were expanded to be something that the city of Vancouver or other cities could utilize, would that help at all?
Yep, sure. Anything that would be pumped directly into our operating would be very, very helpful. I mean, we do talk, the federal government talks a lot about capital stimulus, where they would give us money to build bridges or new transit projects. However, if we don't have the engineers on staff, if they've been laid off, if the planners have been laid off, then it makes it very, very hard to start that stuff that we were so familiar with from, say, 2008. So very different circumstances than 2008. And I really think maybe when the Prime Minister and the premiers have their next call, they can make municipalities the center focus of their conversations, because they need to get their heads together and help us out here.
What about the idea that the law could be amended and municipalities could go forward being able to run deficits? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's, I think, insane because we have no other revenue sources. We have property taxes and we have some user fees, recreation center fees. So if we went way far into deficit, if we were running deficits, how would we ever pay those off? So, I mean, it doesn't work that way. The way the Constitution structures, we're a creature of the province, and by law, we're not allowed to run deficits. So we're not structured to run deficits. So just changing the law at a provincial level wouldn't help us. It has to be, I think, a short-term influx of operating, and then a longer-term plan as to how they're going to help us. You can't. This has happened in cities. Cities have gone bankrupt here in Canada. I mean, New York famously went bankrupt in the 70s. They had to lay off police and firefighters, and I just think that cities have been kind of left out here. And if cities are abandoned, then our economic recovery will be abandoned as well.
Okay, I have to leave it there. I'm out of time. Thanks so much, Mayor Stewart. Pleasure to have you back on the show.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.